Why did the Alaskan cross the road? In this week's episode, Lars sneaks into Sweden, Joel teaches children to drive, and we finally find a flat-pack car. The guys talk about HoloLens development, Unmanned flight, and NASA's involvement. They get a reply from Jeff Bezos, and then try to solve the mess of having flying cars. The Dane The Pain, providing cleaning services for eccentrics since 2001.
And you are listening to another episode of the Dane The Pain, the show where the sun never sets and constantly upsets the Swedish people. Good morning, Joel. It's been a little while since we talked last.
Yeah.
How you been?
I'm great. Good. I love it because it's literally you're waking up and I'm preparing to slumber, and somehow somehow you managed to sneak into Sweden.
Well, don't be too loud about it, okay?
Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yes. Yes, I am actually in Stockholm.
The one country we're not allowed to be played in or anything.
I know. We've been banned for several months now. But no, I made this undercover trip here. I told everybody I was Norwegian.
For me, when I go overseas, or when I did when I was younger, I always told people that I was Canadian.
Well, you almost are.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, but I honestly, that is, people generally did not know how to take. I mean, I never had any trouble anywhere I ever went, and that includes places like Turkey and Greece,
and Sweden.
I actually never got to Sweden, believe it or not. But if you're somewhere, be a Canadian.
This is true, and just say sorry a lot.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
I'm here. I've just been presenting at what's called DevSum. DEVSUM, which is a yearly conference in Sweden, and I came here on Tuesday. It's Saturday morning now for me, and I did a workshop on Wednesday, which was on HoloLens development, which was kind of interesting actually. I really like doing these workshops because you get to know the people in the workshop a lot better than you say do in a presentation where you're kind of just talking at people almost. And the ideas that people sometimes have of what to use this for is just so kind of eye-opening. So there was one lady in the workshop this week that she works for a pharmaceutical manufacturing company. So they essentially create, hardware and software for pharmaceutical production, and create big factories and stuff like that. So there were some very interesting ideas that came out of that, just in terms of how you could use the device. So that was very interesting, actually.
So now, is that that you said DevSum? Is that something that's like in other countries as well, or is it just a Sweden sort of deal?
It is, as far as I know, it's only in Stockholm, and I think this year was the 12th year they had it, so it's been going for a while. And it was, I always like, in Scandinavia, I kind of like the conference venues because they often choose these kind of peculiar or quirky places. So last year in November, I did a conference down the south of the country in Malmö, and that was in an old abattoir, where...
An abattoir?
An abattoir. So a slaughterhouse, right?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Help me out
and,
there.
And it was a bit morbid because the cloakroom where you can go and get your coat, you can hang up your coat, get a number and all that. That was all your clothes and your bags or whatever was hang on old meat hooks. So I thought that was
that's walking right up to that border of creepy.
Yeah, it was a bit. And it was just one of those things that they chose as their details, I guess, of the place. And this time it was in an old brewery that had been converted into an event venue, and the rooms were, some of them were kind of in the middle of things, just cordoned off with curtains, and another one was up the top. The one I presented in was like they called it, I guess the lecture chancellor was like the Knight's Hall. So it was this, high ceiling, long room with, windows and was quite grand. So it's always some interesting venues that come up here compared to, if you do it in the US or in Australia, it's always in hotels pretty much, or, convention centers. And it's it's kind of purpose built, where these are not. So you get these, I don't know, it's interesting on a different level.
So you've been doing these things, similar sorts of presentations and what have you for a couple, for HoloLens anyways, for a couple of years, right?
I was looking at, for HoloLens, it's I did my first HoloLens talk probably 16 months ago, I think, something like that. It was about 2 or 3 months after the device was announced. So it's been about that, yeah.
So if that's the case, I'm just kind of curious, what's the difference in the crowds? Is there a different theme as far as questions you're getting? Are you getting a different kind of a group of developers, newer people, or is it sort of the same thing, just a new batch of folks coming in the door? Or do you even have any thoughts on that?
No, I certainly have. And we when I first started doing the talks, it was much more about, hey, here's a thing, and this is what it does. And everybody went, ooh, right. Now it's more about we've heard about the HoloLens and we've seen maybe some videos or pictures or something. Tell me more, or let me have a try. I want to see what it actually does. So the audience certainly has moved along. I did an intermediate level talk yesterday. So another guy that does HoloLens did a kind of a more of an introduction talk that says, here's how the framework is built up and here's what the different components are. And I did a talk that says, hey, here's more sort of, if you really are developing an app, you should make sure you think about these things. And that talk a year ago would never have worked because no one would have known about the first kind of introduction level anyway. But now it does work because I can talk about more sort of, I talk about testing and how do you design audio, and that conversation is one that you now have because people are actually thinking about developing for HoloLens. So it certainly has moved along the crowd, but it still is mainly concerned about people that haven't seen the device in action, which is fine. I don't mind.
Well, I was just kind of curious because I think, you're in I don't know the unique position, but you're one of the few people that I at least follow that have been sort of there from the start and have seen the evolution, and then also had a chance to see other things like Apple this week announced I think the API for what's going to be their AR VR. I'm not sure, mixed reality tool set, and I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that, or what do you think? They're doing?
It's kind of usually the way that Apple works is that they'll see where the market is heading and see what kind of works. They won't take a new step to do something for the first time. They kind of did with the iPhone, and they really pushed the market back then. And as Richard Campbell said yesterday, I was in a talk that he did, the host of .NET Rocks. He said that the iPhone wasn't the start of the smartphone revolution, it was the end, because every phone since then has looked like it, which was a good point. But apart from the iPhone, Apple is more about, hey, here's a segment of the market that seems to work well, and we'll just kind of build a product that's above everything else, and they do it really, really well. And that's been kind of their MO, and it's a good thing because they take a product that a lot of people are passionate about and they kind of push everybody to do better. And they did that this week with ARKit, which is what they're calling their tool. And the tracking in this was very impressive. So the tracking is how it sees the real world and places augmented digital assets or models on it. So it's not a mixed reality experience necessarily. You could argue maybe it is, but it does have the real advantage of being able to work on every single iPhone, or at least the newer generations of iPhones. And that
was my what I thought I understood was that it would only go from the 7 forward, or maybe I'm off, or maybe it's 5 forward.
Yeah, but that's still okay, right? Because generally the people that buy Apple products will buy another one every 2 generations or so. So I still think they can do really cool stuff, and it'll certainly be pushed very far because they have so many devices off the bat that will use it. And they're using this. Google Tango is using similar technology, but it's more accurate because Google Tango is actually new hardware. That also means they don't have as many people that use it. So with ARKit, it's the tracking of the real environment, which is done based on kind of it uses the camera and some other sensors, gyroscope and whatnot, to keep track of certain reference points in the environment. So it doesn't map the whole room like the HoloLens does, which is why you don't get the whole 3D model that you can interact with. But you do get enough reference points so that you can place things on flat surfaces, and you can do other things that is very convincing. And apparently this I don't know, this demo seemed to be kind of a golden path demo, but it was very convincing and it was really well done. So I'm very keen to see what comes out of this.
So golden path memo, what is that?
So golden path is that you, for a large demonstration, you just make a product that does one thing. And if you clicked on the wrong button at the wrong time, it would kind of blow up because it's not ready. So they're building a demo that demonstrates what they want it to be in the end. And this is the thing that Apple is extremely good at. They when they announce something, it's very slick. So I was very happy to see that, and I think we can expect really cool things from developers on the iOS platform.
Well, I've not heard that term before. That's interesting, and I actually really had never really thought about that, because generally when you see these announcements, they are, most companies are fairly limited in what they show. But I think back to the HoloLens announcement, and although they did try to keep things fairly narrow, pardon the expression, because the field of focus on it is pretty small, but they at least seem to be trying to do a lot more things.
Well, I think when they finally released the HoloLens, it's still a prototype device, and there's still the demos that Microsoft do on stage are incredibly rehearsed. Like they can almost be reading off the script in a book, I would have thought. I do know people within Microsoft, and they say like there's a whole division in Microsoft that all they do is public demos and make sure that they're vetted and rehearsed and all this. And I always come back to the story of when they announced the first iPhone, when Apple did that. And I can't remember the story in details, but essentially Steve Jobs was meant to press this button here, press that button there, then do this, and and the developers was in the front row, and they were wearing brown underwear because it was just so fragile at the time, right? It was not ready by any means.
Yeah.
And then he goes and does a call, and he says, "Let me just call whoever it was he called," and apparently that feature would break, 90% of the time or half the time or something. And he wasn't meant to do that, but it does work. It did work, and it was, it was very cool because he called someone on the phone while he was listening to music or something like that. Like it was this very convincing scenario. So
where it switched over. So that falls into that category, which I'm very familiar with, which is sometimes it's better to be lucky than
I'd rather be lucky than good any day.
Well, that's cool. So you went all the way to Sweden to talk about HoloLens, and then where are you going
tomorrow?
next?
So today we're having a Swedish cultural day. So the international speakers have been invited on this, I think it's a boat trip. It goes to an island, and we'll have a traditional Swedish lunch, which I'm assuming is going to involve, raw fish or pickled herring, which is okay for me because I grew up with that stuff. I love it. But then, cheese probably. Lots of coffee. If you haven't been to Sweden, if you go to any cafe or sort of lunch place or anything, there's just endless supply of coffee afterwards. It's just a big urn, and there's always coffee. Just coffee, where normally you would have to buy a coffee. No, that's just always, included implicitly.
I think I might have to move there. That sounds like heaven.
That's pretty good. And then tomorrow morning I'm taking the train to Oslo, which is a 6-hour train journey.
So, and that's NDC.
It is. It's BNDC. I'll be doing a private talk for a company on the Monday. I got a user group talk on the Tuesday. I'm doing another 6 Pluralsight recordings while at the event with various other authors, and then 2 talks on Friday, and then I fly to Denmark on Saturday. So.
And then you're going to remain silent for 48 hours because you'll be sick of talking.
Well,
or something like that.
Something like that. I'm actually going directly to a friend's 40th birthday when I land. So that'll be interesting. But I'm looking forward to it.
Well, what else is going on in the world?
Well, enough about us and me and the black stump. You found this. Well, I thought the theme of the show, now that we've wrapped it on for a bit, could be something about flying, and you found this unmanned flight article for NASA, in the US, and about how they're kind of soliciting requests for proposals, I guess.
Well, so part of I'm always so I'm interested in research and different stuff, and I didn't have any idea they had this part of NASA that just worked on sort of I think what it's called is the Transformative Aeronautics Concepts Program, which is a mouthful, and of course there's an acronym for it. And I love it. They're saying is they may or may not work, but we won't know unless we try, which I love. And so I had two thoughts about it. First of all, I wanted listeners to know about this site because it's so cool. I mean, if you go and you look through it, it's sort of like this. It's sort of like going to TechCrunch or something like that, but without all the ads. Or what's the Ars Technica or any of these sites. I mean, it's basically you go down there, and it's like a list of all of these things that you might see, whether it be drones, especially fuels, or biofuels, that kind of thing, drone management, drone traffic management, but it's all publicly funded or publicly private funded. And so that's my other sort of reason I wanted to bring this up, is that I think sometimes we don't hear about the role that government and government funding of research plays in many of these wonderful things that we use on a day-to-day basis that are put out by private companies. And I had no idea that this even exists for NASA. And I know I've followed NASA online, and I know there's a gaggle of people I follow on social media that, I mean, they're the kind of people that like film the rocket launches and actually follow the various stages. You can get alerts from when they, leave
so what's
the
this site called?
like that. It's called, if you look up the Transformative Aeronautics Concept Program, it's a page in NASA, or if you want to go directly, there's a www.nasa.gov /aero.
Right.
AERO is another one. So I would encourage everybody to crash their page because it's very cool. And they do this every year. They go out and they solicit ideas, from half a dozen different folks, and there's lots of different interesting ones. And I haven't finished reading them all. The next one I want to look at is biofuels, because we talked about that before with I think Alaskan Airlines.
Wood chips, I think it was. They were using.
Oh yeah, well, and it's the whole idea of like drone management. Because so they're thinking about, so if you let's say you run a utility, and you talked about this before, and you have electric lines that you want to monitor, and how you can manage a whole fleet of drones in the air at one time. And these ideas were sort of silly 10 years ago because probably the computing power didn't exist, but now it does or will. And so, it's the problems you didn't know.
And as people invent stuff and other people take that invention and use it in ways that it was never intended, it's important that government bodies like NASA in the US take these ideas and kind of try to formalize some rules around it, or at least some guidelines. You're looking at it says here NASA completes its latest drone traffic management flight campaign, right? So they're really looking into, their space is aeronautics, obviously, it's being NASA. So drones is part of what they do. And I know in Australia it's been a problem with drones in the cities. I'm guessing it's the same in the US. Because they're now so readily available, you're now no longer allowed to fly drones above a certain height in cities. You can't fly them over your neighbor's property, and there's a whole bunch of rules around it now because people are just getting fed up with it. There's places where you go skiing where you're not allowed to have drones because people are having these follow me drones on skis, which is cool because it just follows you as you ski down the hill, and the visuals are amazing. But if there's 10 people that have drones at the same time doing that, you're going to have problems. So there's a whole bunch of other issues that come with it.
Yeah, I think that that's one thing that you sometimes miss in all of these different articles is there's, I'm sure it's there, but there's not the one guy or gal holding up her hand saying,
no, they never have.
Do we really want to? But I mean, I think you wouldn't have progress if you didn't have people who just were very focused and pushed to build something better, or just something that they thought was really neat. So anyways, go check that out in NASA, and we'll throw a link up on the site as well. And go learn something.
No, it is really interesting site actually. There's they've announced the Forum 360. So they do also have public events that you can attend if you want. So about future aircrafts. And we were talking about this on an earlier show about the solar-powered aircraft or the battery-powered aircraft. So there's a whole bunch of new stuff coming out, like a flying wing. I'm looking at a picture here that has, I'm assuming it's not a real thing, but I don't know. It's essentially a flying wing for passengers, so much larger capacity.
Hey, while I remember this, Lars, this is totally unrelated, but I wanted to update the folks that listen to us. You did contact.
Oh, right.
Someone.
Yeah, that's
Amazon.
Right. So last episode, we said, well, let's get a show on Amazon. Let's get Jeff Bezos on the show if we can. I don't know if I think that's what we said, and you tweeted him. You said, hey, Jeff, be on our show. And I found his email address, which apparently is the most publicly known email address ever. It's jeff@amazon.com. No, that's how easy it is. So I wrote an email to him saying, hey, we talk a lot about your stuff. We think Amazon is a big player, and it's important in the future. We do a little podcast. We now published in, 53 countries, 57 countries? And we'd love to have you on the show. Talk more about what Amazon does and where you're headed and all that stuff. And I didn't expect a reply, obviously. Like this guy, but I didn't get a reply from Jeff Bezos. I did get a reply, however, from one of his assistants that said I showed it to you. It is the most polite decline ever.
It was the sort of response that made me really go, who is this person that wrote it? And I wasn't creeping on her, but basically she's got a public profile. She'd worked at Amazon for 6 months, I think out of the University of Washington or somewhere in Seattle. And you're right. I actually asked you if I could clip and publish, take out the name and stuff, and just publish the letter because it was so polite.
Yeah, why not?
Because it was worth asking just to get that. I'm like, I wonder if it's a form letter. I wonder if she actually wrote it herself. I think that would be really awesome. But maybe
I'm okay with it being a template because it was personal enough that I felt kind of like, oh, at least I get a reply. I didn't expect to get anything.
Yeah, I can't badmouth Amazon anymore. No, I'm teasing. I you know what? There's cool stuff like that happens, and there's a lady that works for Microsoft who, and I can't. Her name is Laura. She's a fellow or something for Microsoft, and she bakes and sends out cookies to folks who she engages with in social media.
How do I get cookies?
And she sent me a couple dozen cookies. You didn't get cookies? Okay, well, I'm not sure if she'll send them overseas or not.
She'll send them to Alaska.
But I will. I'll have to tag you. physically we're connected with the lower 48. You just have to go to Canada. But I digress. I will see if I can prod her into
cookies
providing
make everything
some
better.
cookies. Yeah, well, and they weren't just like cookies; they're really damn good cookies. So between the two things, I'm like, those are two really good examples of some behemoth companies doing things at a personal level that were really good. And that wasn't something I intended to talk about, Lars, but I did want to make sure that we close the loop on Jeff Bezos.
Right.
And I've not given up yet because
I could be terribly persistent as well. I'm kind of like Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption. I write a letter a week, and then when I get a reply, I write 2 letters a week.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Shawshank Redemption is now 20 years old.
Nice.
Yes.
What's the...
not as old as you.
Oh, yeah, you're getting nerds.
I want to talk about flying cars because it's something, as nerds, we love flying cars. We love the notion of flying cars. We love the idea of having a flying car. And we love the thought process of figuring out how the hell it would actually work to have flying cars, because I still can't see it happening. I know that there's lots of research going into it. There's a lot of people that go, hey, I've built a flying car and it's fine. I'll just land at runways and I'll drive off and I'll be a car, and then I'll fly and I'll adhere to aeronautical rules and I'll be a plane. And I just don't think it's that simple, because once you have a flying car, you're not going to want to be confined to airports. You want to land on your street or on a field next to it or wherever you can. And there was an article on Ars Technica about flying cars, and there's the title is "A Flying Car is About to Become a Real Thing," and it's essentially an investor that says, "Hey, I think they are," but there's a fair few companies that are now really, really seriously investing and researching and building flying cars. None of them are readily available. None of them you can actually buy. But it's a field that we had this chat just before we started recording. It's something that's being held back by legislation more than technology. And as such, I think the technology is trying to shape itself around the legislation. Which is, I don't know if that's a good thing. I'm not sure where we headed.
Southeast Alaska, we have amphibious and float planes, which in fact, they when I grew up, they were called air taxi services, because that's really what they were. You were surrounded by water, and that's how you got around, or by boat. It strikes me planes already are sort of cars, but the problem is that we've developed 2 different systems and 2 different expectations for aeronautics and for cars, and it's hard for me to imagine it being anything but regional, or in certain areas where you'd be able to do this, right? Because of just all the things you're just talking about, not just regulatory, but the physical structure. And then looking at some of these, I think there was a comment that was that Z-Aero's vehicles sound like air raid sirens going off thanks to their electric motors. So you imagine, the impact of that noise pollution multiplied, on an order, or as you said, people wanting to land in their backyard or in the street in their neighborhood. It's just very hard to imagine. Not that I don't think it's going to happen, but how it happens is probably the bigger
I think it's going to have to
question.
be automated. I don't think we're going to let humans fly anything when there's that many of them around.
Well, the one I'm looking at has 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 12 engines that are all perpendicular. I should say they're parallel to the ground, sort of like top of a helicopter. And the thing looks insanely dangerous.
It does look like a torture instrument of torture.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy. I know people do stupid things with their cars. Most people have probably closed their finger in the door of their car once, right?
Yeah,
or something
hit their
like
head
that.
on the frame.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and put 12 electric motors on the wings.
It spins propellers with blades that cut
stabilizer.
stuff.
Yeah, and see if you can walk away unscathed.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's. I mean, the article points out that, for example, Los Angeles has 6 or 7 airports or airfields, but they have 300 heliports, and it's obvious that you'd want to land as close to where you're going as possible, just like you do with a car. And then either you just park it there if it's not a flying car, but more of a personal flying machine. You park it there somehow, or if it is a car, then you drive off from that place. And it does point towards being more drone-like. And I'm just wondering when Amazon gets their drones delivery in effect, because they're really serious about it. Hey Jeff, do you want to be on the show talking about it? And we're going to have a lot of drones with essentially decapitation machines flying around. And it's going to have to be incredibly well managed. I know it's coming. I can't envision how we're going to do this in a safe manner.
One of the things that I listened to a story on in the States, and this relates to this, I think, is that the omnipresence of man-made noise, I hate saying man-made, women-made noise, even in areas that are considered rural in the United States, say in Montana and in Wyoming, they've gone out and done studies in these remote areas, and because of jets, power structures, power lines, the ambient noise and the impact on animals is something that's not really been studied very well. And so the more noise we introduce into our world, and I don't know if you've ever gone to a quiet place.
Well, I live in one.
There is no noise, which is, well, you know what I mean, where there's no roads, there's no lights. And if you've ever done that, and I would encourage anybody, if you can, to do it, it is probably the most restful, best feeling you'll ever have after a day or two. You kind of reset, or at least I do. And so that's another part about all these efforts that sometimes they don't think about. What is the impact of that? Do we really want that? I mean, if we had to envision traffic or transportation in the United States per se, would we envision 285 or 300 million cars?
No.
Hell no, we wouldn't do that. So I think there's some of that thinking that has to be applied to these efforts. But anyways,
I agree. It's there's so many unanswered questions, and this would have been the same, I'm sure, when flights first started, right? At least now we have an idea of what impact it can have, but I don't think we know exactly how people are going to use it, because they're not going to use it the way we think they are.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman who I share. He's from Texas, and he always sees crazy things, right? Like people standing in the back of a pickup truck with a ladder, unfolded in the back of the pickup truck. Then they're on top of the ladder working on electrical, and they're not grounded in. And then, I'll send him a picture of a guy with a 30-foot extension ladder with the ladder that's up against the power line as they're working on, so people will misuse everything that you create. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's very dangerous, but yeah, anyways, I'm being supportive of your point. Sorry. Perhaps I need more coffee.
It's 7 a.m. here in Stockholm, so it's almost breakfast time. I don't know. It's the whole conversation around flying cars is we always seen. If you're a proper nerd, you would have seen The Fifth Element, the movie, and that's still. It's one of the movies I've seen that has the best representation of flying cars, because they're all a bit shitty, the cars. Like, we always see flying cars as these magical things, and they kind of just make them all look a bit more sort of grungy. And Blade Runner also has cars that are flying, but it seems like in Blade Runner it's only official vehicles that are allowed to fly. So Hollywood especially have had their thoughts on what flying cars do. But they've never actually addressed the issue of everybody having their own personal flying vehicle. And I think that's we need to somehow figure out how the hell's happening. Can we build some simulators or something?
Well, I mean, then you have these other efforts going on with what's the deal that Musk was working on with the tube in the ground, the shooting people from one location to the other. God, my brain's not working right now. But basically, there's other, you have these sort of seemingly contradictory efforts. The tunneling. Yeah, he's got a big deal. A big thing about making tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
To here and there as another way of transportation, and my guess is it's probably going to be all those. You have electric jets. You have these driverless cars or transportation vehicles. All those things are gonna happen in some shape or form. It's not going to be this huge one sort of item takes over the world kind of deal. I don't think. But yeah, anyway, I would not. Having seen, I've seen firsthand a lot of the impact of plane wrecks and death. Alaska has the highest rate of private pilot license in the United States. So it's basically like I think. What is it, like 12 per 100 people? So every 100 people, 12. There's some figure of data out there, but basically there's a lot of private pilots here, and a lot of them get killed.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the first guy I worked for out of uni, for a company in Melbourne. So I moved from Sydney to Melbourne. He actually had his own airfield. He had his private plane, and he did fall down and crash and die about 5 years ago. So. It does happen, and it's not. That's why I'm saying I don't think we should let humans fly. If this, when this becomes a thing, I think we're much better off automating all of these things, just like cars. To be honest, driving your own car should be a privilege, not a right.
Yeah, well, I was telling you earlier, I was out teaching our last. Well, I don't know, taking our last driver on his second drive ever, and I have to say, and hopefully they're not listening to these podcasts, but of the three now that I've had, he's far and away the best.
Okay,
and
that's good.
It seems, yeah, I know. I was just like relieved. Like I didn't have to like grip on the e-brake the whole time. Like, in case you got a little crazy, and we didn't see any bears or anything to scare us.
Okay, well, we're doing the same thing with our 11-year-old. He actually drives now. Fully.
Nice.
He's bought his first car, and he knows how to drive a manual. Obviously, we've got a bit of land, so he can drive around on the property, and he drives up the back. But he's very confident. Sometimes a little bit too confident and goes a bit fast. But he's 11 and he drives a car fully, no problem at all. He indicates when he turns and everything. So we're trying to take
that's nice.
We're trying to take the novelty out of it. So when he does get on the road, he's not going to be a complete idiot.
And just don't let him drive the Jeep, right?
Well, no. I don't know. I think there's merit in it, in kind of getting that in early, because it is a part of life. In the two countries we live in, you can't survive without a car. That's not always the case in other countries. Like in Stockholm here, you can certainly get around without a car, but not where I am. So.
Well, it'd be pretty expensive to own a car in Europe. Holy cow.
Well, Sweden's all right, it would seem. There's a lot of Mercs and Audis and BMWs and nice cars here. So.
Well, what else is going on? We didn't get Jeff Bezos.
No, we didn't. We still are going to do a show on Amazon. I have one person in mind that could help us with this. So I'm not sure when that could happen, but it will be in an episode not too far away.
Nice. Yeah. Well, do you have? I mean, I know you're in Sweden, so you obviously have heard some jokes, right?
Well, this is where there's a treasure trove. No, it should be nice, because in case they're eavesdropping in, they might break the door and throw me out again.
So I should have told you, actually, is the gentleman that invented the airbag for a bicycle helmet?
Yes.
Recall he was from Sweden.
I believe he was.
Yeah, I think that it would be nice to maybe look him up. For all I know, he could be at one of your workshops, Sorry, I'm just teasing. Anybody that actually, go back and listen to that episode, because that still is one of my favorite ideas. Anyway.
And it does seem to kind of work.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't come in flat pack though.
I should have had one when I was a kid. That's all.
Oh, that's why you are the way you are.
Yeah, there were no bike helmets.
So I think actually it is time for the joke of the week.
It's the joke of the week, so come along with me. I cannot promise it will be funny, but it's the joke of the week.
So now that we're talking about pilots and well, not pilots, but planes and pilots and all this, I found this list of what's called gripe sheets. So when a pilot finishes a trip, he fills out what's called a gripe sheet. Essentially, it tells mechanics what's wrong with the plane, so that they can fix it. And these are real. I found a list of actual complaints and responses from the maintenance engineers. So it says, left inside main tire almost needs replacement. And they've replied, almost replaced left inside main tire. And another one, something loose in cockpit. So they replied, something tightened in cockpit. Dead bugs on windshield. And they replied, live bugs on back order. They're just really clever. There's a bunch of them here, and I can post a link to it. Suspected crack in windshield. Reply, suspect you're right. So they're just really clever because they're not useful. It's like getting an error report when you're a software engineer that says, the internet's broken, or the button doesn't work. Like, you can't fix that because you don't know which button, you don't know what's happened, you don't know what the error is that you're getting. And these are very much the same way. Number 3, engine missing. Engine found on right wing after brief search. So obviously he meant misfiring, right? Missing, it's misfiring. Yes, but yes. It's, they're really good. They're really good. And there's, I don't know, about 25 of them or something. So I'll post a link to that. So
that's probably closer to the truth than you'd like to think. I've got a family member that works and flies 737s, and he talks about that whole process quite a bit. And talk about pressure when something's wrong with a plane, having to put up your hand and saying we're not going to fly, and then that's a job with stress. Let me tell you, I don't know how he does it, but anyways.
Yeah, I know.
Well, those are pretty good jokes, Lars. I hope you have a safe journey on your way, and hopefully maybe we'll get some time later this week to record again.
Yep.
After you've had a chance to see some different folks.
Yeah.
And again, Jeff Bezos, I know you're listening. I know you listen. We will have you on the show.
Yes. It might take us 1,000 episodes, but we'll get there.
That's right. We may have to interview you at your funeral.
I thought you were going to say your house, you damn stalker.
No. I do not want to get a restraining order. So. Until next time, Lars.
All right. I'll see you later.
Take care.
See you, mate.
Bye.
Thank you for listening in on another episode of The Dane the Pain. We record across the Pacific, across hemispheres, and across time zones. You can find us on www.daneandthepain.com. Our Twitter handle is Dane_Pain, and we are The Dane and the Pain on YouTube and Facebook. We're also on your favorite podcast app, including iTunes, and please join our fan club by clicking the Register Now button on our website to know about upcoming shows and any free stuff we may have to share. See you next time on The Dane and the Pain.